This is Marty with Marty's Diesel, and this video is going to be just what I want you guys to do when you're installing the fuel system lines. You will receive a single line that is approximately 3 feet long, and it will have a green quick disconnect 90-degree fitting on it, and it's going to go in this location. It's 3 feet long because it is more than long enough to reach anywhere in this area where you might want to mount your fuel pump, okay? This is the only line that we're sending out right now that's not tagged. This particular line has a tag on it that says trim hose to length, and then you're going to attach it to the fuel filter base. Now, keep in mind, this is only an extended cab truck, so technically crew cabs are a little bit longer. But you could quite literally mount the fuel pump assembly as far back as the very end of the cab on an extended cab. Obviously, you would never be able to mount it this far back because there's too much stuff in the way here, right? So this line right here has a tag on it. It tells you where to attach it to. This line right here is your return line. This will eventually get attached to the bottom of your regulator. This comes pre-installed. This comes pre-installed. You cannot get these two lines wrong if you install them and you follow the instructions on the tag. Typically, when I'm installing the lines, what I do is I install the other end of this line in the valley and then pull this through all the way back to here. That way, once I mount my pump, I can cut that, trim it to length, and install it on the fuel pump. I usually install this line and run it forward, and I usually run it in parallel with this guy up into the valley. I did this on purpose so that you can't mix these two lines up, okay? And then this short line right here, this little 3-footer or so, this one obviously you can't mess up. It's not tagged, but it literally can't go anywhere else. So if you follow these lines up, they are very loosely ran right up through where the factory lines went, okay? Once again, keyword, loosely. And if you look here in the valley, you will see that we have already loosely got the fuel pump replacement fitting installed, and we've also got the line ran to it. This line also has a tag on it. It says that you are supposed to attach this line to this fuel pump replacement fitting and do not remove this line until you've already driven 200 miles on your truck. There is a reason for that. Leave it on until you actually know for sure that your fuel system is installed correctly and does not have any issues. This tag end right here was attached to that blue quick disconnect 90, and it also has a tag that tells you that it goes to the bottom of the regulator. As you can see, you're going to have to cut this down a little bit, maybe about 18 inches or so, maybe a little tiny bit more. And then the same will be said, or can be said, for this line right here. You might have to cut about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 foot off, maybe even 3 foot off. It kind of depends on where you mount your fuel system. And then this line right here will also need to be trimmed a little bit. But long story short, all 3 line assemblies come with tags that tell you where the lines go, so you cannot mess it up. And they also come with these particular fittings pre-installed, as well as this fitting right here, so that you cannot install the lines backwards. You cannot make the mistake if you follow the direction. So this video is going to be a short video that I will be putting inside of another longer video here in a little while as part of our installation series. But for now, since this is my stopping point for the day, I definitely wanted to go over that with this. As per the usual, if you like videos like this, please consider like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, as well as check out our website. Not only can you buy parts, but we're the kind of people that can actually give you technical advice on what you're installing, how you're installing it, why you're installing it, not just sell you the part. So, like I said, give us a check out on YouTube or give us a check out on our website. Thanks for watching. This is Marty with Marty's Diesel, and today's video is going to be going over the installation of the e-fuel system on this truck. We're going to start right back here again at the selector valve. You will see that the fittings are not currently on there because we did cut the lines to size, but we are going to run our bucket test, okay? So we're going to get that filled with diesel. We're going to run that up there underneath those lines, and we're going to run 10 minutes on this system before we hook it up to the selector valve. We're going to make sure we've got 0 to 2 on the vacuum, and we're going to make sure we have 60 psi right here. I'll talk more about that here in a second. But as you can see, these lines are already cut. They're already going to be the correct length for installing on the selector valve. Also notice that we clean the selector valve so that when we do go to put these fittings on there, there's not going to be any dirt and debris getting into those fittings. We've got the fuel pump assembly mounted. Your fuel water separator goes first. It gets tightened as well with that drain on the bottom. Make sure it's tight. If this, well, this is a Bosch pump, so you'll get a fitting that looks like this. It says Marty's on it. You need to make sure that the black fitting is butted up against the fuel pump. Don't leave any space there, okay? It gives you an opportunity to suck air if you leave space there. We've got our wiring harness zip tied directly to the fuel pump. Notice that the wiring harness goes backwards before it goes forward again. That's to give you like a little service loop. So we've also got a fuel pressure gauge mounted down here just because you know, we want to check fuel pressure down here while we're doing the testing. This gauge can be used right here, or it can be used up at the regulator. We'll talk more about that in a minute. We've also got the adjustment on these filter bases to where it's putting the filters really close to the frame rail. That way it keeps everything nice and tight, okay? Here you can see the transfer case. We have plenty of clearance using a 45 here. Now I have another video that talks about using 45s where you got to be careful because you can actually get a leak, because they're the most difficult fitting out of the 3 that we send out to actually, you know, create a seal with. So just be mindful of that, but we do have enough room with this transfer case right here. The transfer case doesn't typically move forward and backward a whole lot, but it will kick up and down a little bit under load. So as long as this side can come up and down and it won't impact that line, you'll be just fine. You'll also notice that not only did we cover the wire with wire loom, we also covered the fuel line with it. Our fuel lines do not come with the wire loom. This is just something that we do, you know, kind of extra. And then if you just follow the fuel lines, you'll see them like go all the way up through it there, through the front. Give me 1 second, I'll go around the front. And here you can see the fuel lines coming up through where the factory fuel lines went through. Remember, all these lines had tags on them, so you cannot install them in the wrong location. This line right here is attached to the 90-degree blue quick disconnect that we're going to put on the selector valve. This line right here is attached to the outlet of the fuel pump. Remember that 45 that's right there? Now you guys can use a straight, a 90, or a 45. I don't care. You can use whatever works best for you right there. Okay? So there's that fitting. There's the fuel pump replacement fitting. There's the 2 seals already installed as well. We also did the 2 little Lego wheels that go inside of there. And as a reminder, you do not need to remove the turbo to do this job. On this particular customer's truck, we are removing the turbo to upgrade it, but you don't have to remove the turbo to install the fuel system. Here's the regulator mounted. You've got the 90-degree fittings that come here. These are your front of headlines, 1 and 2. And this one, as you can see, is installed right there on the factory fitting on the front of the head. And then the other one on the other side goes right to that 90 that you see right there, okay? Do not mess with those fittings that are in the head, okay? You'll also notice we've got about 6 or 7 threads showing right here. This is still loose, okay? We're gonna do a fine tune on this with fuel pressure once we turn the key forward, and at which point, once we get it set, we're gonna lock that down and then not move it anymore. So pretty much, I think that does a good job of showing everything that we've got going on for this install. We do have a 17 step-by-step process that you need to follow from this point forward before you turn the key forward for the first time, or in this case, you know, when you just give power to the fuel pump, okay? Now keep this in mind, this is an extended cab long bed 4-wheel drive. There is, in fact, enough room in between here to put it on the inside of the frame rail. But if you wanted to, you could also mount it on the outside of the frame rail. This particular case, the customer's got a auxiliary oil bypass system on his truck, so that really wasn't a viable option for us. Plus, me personally, I prefer to have the fuel system on the inside of the frame rail, and I prefer to have it as high as possible. In fact, with these brackets, if I could have mounted these brackets across the top and then down the backside here, I would have done that, but I can't because of this cross member. So basically, that just drops the fuel system down almost an inch lower than what it would have been. No harm, no foul. It'll be just fine like that because the filters don't hang down any lower than the axles, and it barely even hangs down lower than the frame, and it certainly hangs down less than the skid plate. There's probably a good 4 or 5 inches between the skid plate itself and the bottom of this filter, and then you can probably subtract about an inch off of that one. So probably a good 3 inches or so, from the bottom of this skid plate on the transfer case to the bottom of that filter. So we're going to go ahead and continue with this install. We're going to do our aeration test, our volume flow test to verify that the fuel pump is passing the fuel like it should. We're going to set our pressure, monitor our vacuum, and once we verify that the entire fuel system is working right according to our 17 step-by-step installation, I'm then going to hook it up to the selector valve. Once I hook it up to the selector valve, I'm going to choose the front tank, and I'm going to test all the same stuff using the front tank. After a 10-minute passing test on the front tank, I'll switch to the rear tank. Once I switch to the rear tank, I'll do the exact same test that I did on the front. If both tanks pass, great, we're good to go. If one tank doesn't pass, I just won't use that tank until I remedy the problem. Or if both tanks fail, I can't use either tank. I have to stop right there, and I got to do something about it. This particular customer, I do believe, is getting a pre-pump solutions kit. I will be adding that in later, but that won't be part of the general e-fuel install video. So I do believe that's all for right now. I might add a little bit more to this video once we get the fuel flowing through. But yeah, let me actually do that. I'm going to go ahead and I'll get the fuel flowing through there, and I'll get a video of that, and that'll be how I finish this video. Thanks for watching. All right, and we're back. Just so happens that we had to wait about a week to get these injectors back. So right now we are doing the volume flow test as well as the 10-minute test where we set the fuel pressure to 60 psi and we monitor vacuum. Vacuum should be about 0 to 2 on the gauge, which it is. And notice that the line comes straight out of the fuel pump assembly straight down into the fuel itself. There's your return line. It's got the little blue line on it. Up here in the valley is where you may have your gauge, which is fine. You can have it there or you can have it down there. This particular customer is going to get an edge sensor put in right there, so that's where we're going to put that. We're going to leave this gauge down here for now. We're actually also smoke testing a nice little KC turbo setup. But back to this, we're going to go get a gallon jug, and we're going to make sure that this line right here is transferring approximately 1 gallon a minute. We're also going to submerge that line in the fuel itself, and we're going to make sure that it's not pushing a bunch of aerated fuel. You can hear the pump sometimes make like a little cogging noise. That's typically just a little bit of air going through the system. When you first power this fuel pump on, you will notice that it will be loud. It might make some, cogging noises. That should go away, and it should be quiet like that after not too long of a time period. So we're going to do, like I said, our volume flow test. We're going to let this run for about 10 minutes. Obviously the cab is off, but if the cab wasn't off, we would then hook up the selector valve. We would test the front tank for 10 minutes. We'd make sure that that tank never read more than about 5 to 7 on the vacuum. And then we would then switch to the rear tank. And then the rear tank, we would run it for about 10 minutes as well. And we would make sure that it doesn't go above like 6 to 8 on the vacuum. Once we've done each tank for 10 minutes and everything's good to go, we're then going to road test the truck. And we typically recommend you leave these gauges on for at least 100 miles per tank, okay? And you monitor that vacuum gauge periodically while driving, because if this drives up over like 10, 12, 14 on the vacuum, or this one does, that indicates there's something wrong in the tanks. Now, this particular truck actually has our pre-pump solutions kit already installed on it, and it has new umbrellas, and we made sure that we weren't suction cupping the umbrellas to the bottom of the tank. So I know we're not going to run into any issues there on this particular truck, but your truck might be different. So you really got to follow these instructions if you want to be able to use both tanks. Our kit, the Marty's Diesel e-fuel system, is one of the only on the market that allows you to run both tanks, and it gives you a gauge in order to figure out if you have an issue or not. Okay, most other kits on the market force you to go to a single tank. We don't do that, but you have to do your due diligence and make sure that your vacuum does not exceed what it should not exceed. Okay, so that'll be all for today's video. We're going to get the cab back down on this. We'll actually finish up the wiring. We'll turn the key on. We'll go test drive the truck.